The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On this episode of the Cap Podcast, we react to Fine Host Day by Flo Milli. Welcome back. This is episode 502 of your critical but accurate tour through hip hop, the Cap Podcast. I am your host, Nate Sperlin. That is my co-host, Taylor McLeod. Thank you for watching on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you might be watching or listening in Spotify and Apple Podcast case you're probably listening. But either way, thank you for doing it. Feel free to go ahead and join the conversation by leaving a comment, liking this video, and subscribing to this channel. Taylor, how are you doing today?
The sun's shining and it's not in my eyes, so I'm doing pretty good. How are
Happy to
you?
hear it. I'm good. The sun is also shining over here, way better than having rain. Had a really nice week. This is fake spring part 2. So one more week of coldness and then we actually get to spring. So I'm very excited for that. All right. So this is episode 502 of the Cat Podcast. And on this episode, we will be talking about Fine Host Day by Flo Milli, which is 14 tracks, 33 minutes long, featuring Anicia, Monaleo, SZA, Cardi B, and Gunna. Once again, feel free to go ahead and join the conversation in the comments below. That being said, Taylor, what did you think of Fine Host Day by Flo Milli?
So I like that it kind of falls into line. What was the exact phrasing of the last album she did?
You still here? It was Ho, why is you the first one was Ho, why is you here? And the second one was You Still Here, Ho. And then the
Yeah,
third
yeah,
one, this one
yeah.
right here is Fine Host Day.
So I like that. I like that it's not like, album 1, album 2, album 3. Like it's not like, Carter 1, Carter 2, Carter 3 or anything like that. But I always like it when stuff is connected like that. And I think my favorite example is like dropout, late registration, graduation. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Where it's like things are intertwined, but it's not like 1, 2, 3. So off the rip, I like that. Like I always like when especially a newer artist does things in a series and it's like, hey, I have some continuity here. After that though, there are like 5 or 6 points in this album that I really, really like. The
Mhm.
more I listen to it, the more I can appreciate certain things. But there are certain parts of this album, and I don't think this is on Flo Milli. I don't think this is on a lot of artists that this happens, where some of this feels like a little like paint by numbers, right? Some
Mhm.
of it feels very genuine and like an artist cementing what they like to do, but there are other points on it, especially when you get a lot of the more generic instrumentals and you get that like generic like punch in flow, like bar, 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 that things start to feel a little stale. Like I think the first song actually is a little like that, Understand. And so it set me off on a just not a bad foot necessarily, but like the wrong foot. So it took me a few listens to go through this and find the point. So that's my first reaction was there's some stuff on here that will not stick with me because it's formulaic. And then there's other stuff that I'm like, all right, this is definitely the lane that I hope Flo Milli continues to pursue because it's clear that she's very good at it.
Yeah. Um, First of all, like this album was supposed to drop, I want to say maybe either October 2023, November 2023, like somewhere in that lane. We were anticipating on talking about this album last season. And obviously we weren't able to do that because of Flo Milli not releasing the album. But with that, seeing the rollout and how it went about or how she went about doing it with like the samples of like specifically like Chocolate Rain and stuff like that. I hated that shit so much. If the album was gonna be full of tracks like that, I would have hated this album. Like just straight up, I would have hated it. It's like the same thing with Saweetie, for example, where like she had what was it, Tap In, and what was the other song? It was the Blow the Whistle remix or whatever. Maybe it's the same
Yeah.
thing. I'd be confusing it. But regardless to say, we see where Saweetie is now, and she herself admits, to her credit, admits that nobody cares about her music. And it kind of bothered me kind of seeing Flo Milli go down that same path to basically music irrelevance. But that being said, I'm glad that she did it. And because of that, I had so many worries, so many doubts going to this album. And then I finally listened to the album, and it sounds like something that Flo Milli actually put together and put her time into. And because of that, I have to say, like, honestly, I feel like I might have to apologize to Flo Milli for doubting her because we've seen her body of work with You Still Here Ho and Why Is You Here Ho in the first place. Like we've seen that and we've seen her be able to put together full bodies of work. So I guess that's a little bit of an apology for the doubts, I guess. Um I am concerned, however, that Never Lose Me has been released 5 times before this album had came out. And there's a version, original version. There's a version with Lil Yachty. There's a version with Brent Fayez, I believe. No, no, no. Bryson Tiller is the third one. And then you have the sped up version, the slowed down version for TikTok. And now we have a sixth version on this album, which is with Cardi B and SZA. And this one, honestly, is probably the best. And we'll get into that when we start talking about like song by songs, and stuff like that. Another thing that I noticed with this album is how many recognizable names are on this album on the production side. Taylor, how many names are recognized? How many of these names that I'm about to list are recognizable to you? Bugs Ronan, Honorable C Note, Kid Hazel, Juicy J, Lex Luger, Herps, Cardo, Bangladesh, ATL Jacob, and Mike Will made it.
Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 names in there that are you have like 3 or 4 real big names,
Mhm.
and then probably like a double that number of recognizable names.
Yeah. So the production with this album, or at least the names with the production with this album,
Yeah.
I think that's really the difference between an album that I thought or I was preparing for it to be just like complete trash with all the samples and stuff like that. And now you have like quality, at least on the production side, adults in the room, as you would like to say, Taylor, on that production side. And I think that that makes a really, really big difference in how this album is received. Um, Also, I think that with her pushing back the album, she's pushing it back to make sure that it's perfect, or at least for her standards. And I think that shows even like when you look at the cover art and when you look at the track list, specifically the track list where she has like the names of the songs listed, and then like in the bottom right corner, there's like logos for each of the songs. And then like even within that, like there's a song on this album called Life Hack. And the way that she makes the logo for Life Hack looks like the Adult Swim logo. Like never looks like the ESPN
Yeah.
logo. So I appreciate that attention to detail too. It's clear that throughout her career, she's very influenced by specifically reality TV. But seeing that kind of broaden out to just plain old regular TV within itself, like all forms of TV, I really appreciate that as well. So overall, looking like just my anticipation for this album until I heard it was really, really like I don't want samples, or really just like worried that there would be too many samples and it would like she would try to like basically chase a sound that was never really hers in the first place and doesn't really make sense for her to go down that route. But instead, what I'm seeing or what we've heard on this album is her establishing her main sound, her developing her secondary sound, and her still experimenting in between the margins with that. And for that reason, I'm satisfied with it.
Yeah. I think first of all, and I'm glad you brought it up. You sent it to me a couple days ago, and we were talking about it. I think the packaging of this album, and I think the packaging of the last 3 albums is great, right? And if we're still in an era when where a physical release mattered, like to open up like to pull like the pamphlet out of the booklet out of the CD and like open it and see like that the setup would have been I mean, like that's cool, and it's a lot different that like we see it now, where it's like a screenshot that you send me on Twitter, and it's like,
Mhm.
hey, check this out, and I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's not something
Yeah.
you take out and you like feel, and you're like, oh wow, this is well thought out, but it is, and so there are little hints, and I think we mentioned this with our last Flo Milli review, where it's like her artistry, you can tell that like it's there, right? And so there's good it's like when people look at a house, right? And they're like, yeah, there's good bones. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there's good, like, so it's there.
This one isn't going to collapse.
I think that I think the issue comes with a song like Life Hack, or, there's a couple other songs on here where you have to have those like lowest common denominator songs, right? You have to have like the songs where it's all like internet lingo, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
it feels like it almost sometimes it feels like tweets like lined up right together in a song, and it's like, all right, that's okay, and it's when that's like you every once in a while, but we're so inundated, and it's not just Flo Milli, obviously it's everybody. Like we have Drake talking like he's, you know what I mean, like a Instagram baddie half the
You're
time, which is like you know what I mean,
you're
like so
dealing
it's
with
like,
me rough.
yeah, when that's not even yeah, there is that, but he has like, he has bars that sound like tweets,
Mhm.
and he used to do the IG caption
Yeah.
bars, and that was like, all right, cool, like, there's always a Drake line, but now it's like, oh, it's like a little quip that you would see on Twitter, and it's like, all right, this isn't, it's just it's disappointing that every album pretty much we listen to now has to have something like that in there,
Hmm.
right? A song like Life Hack or even like Clap Summer, like like these songs, they feel like attempts to like capture this how modern, like the like modern pop culture. It just, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like too specific. It's not, because there are other songs on here that are like, yeah, this would go at, maybe not anytime ever, but it's like this would have some lasting power, but it's mixed in, and it's, again, this isn't a Flo Milli issue. This is an issue with the larger landscape where you have to have like those one or two lines that might go viral, whether it's on Twitter or TikTok or Reels or whatever. So that can be disappointing, especially when you see the thought that goes into like who's on the production. There's big names, like feature wise here, like, and something like the second song, "New Me" with Anisha, like she's been making noise lately, like bubbling up. So it's like there's like the obviously you have SZA and Cardi B, those are superstars. Gunna, that's a superstar,
Hmm.
but then like Anisha, Mauna Leo, like you have, so it's like it's this very like thought out and intentional process, but then there's points on it where it feels dragged down by like some like internet stuff, and I understand that's unavoidable. I get it, right? And I also understand that, like, isn't Flo Milli like 21 still, 22?
Yeah, she's
So
definitely
it's like,
younger than
yeah,
us.
right. So it's, yeah, so I have to remember, it's like I feel like it's like old man yells at cloud a little bit, but I feel less like that because this is so prevalent across all,
Mm.
like, so many artists. It's not just a young rapper. It's you got everyone trying to make these songs, like, and that's why, like, last week or 2 weeks ago I was so excited for the Schoolboy album, because you don't have any of that. Because it's like, it's almost like a legacy artist at that
Yeah.
point, right? It's like an old man who can be like, yeah, I do whatever I want, and it's like, that's great, that's what I want. So I don't want to get too dragged down in that, because we can have that same conversation every week about every album that we talk about. The high points on here, and maybe this is where we can start getting into some songs. The high points are really high. Like
Yeah.
New Me, not New Me, the second song goes crazy. I think Flo Milli kills the first half of that, and then the beat kind of drops out and lets Anisha, and she has that very like unique, like that like lower register voice, and she can really just like do the talk rapping. And
Hmm.
so that works. Never Lose Me is a good song. I
Yeah.
know it has like, it makes sense that that's the one they're pushing, right? It
Hmm.
makes sense. And then honestly, and we'll get into favorite tracks, but I wanted to know what you thought of this, because like, Not Sorry, track 13, I think is
Hmm.
the best song here.
Oh,
Like
that's
that one
interesting.
feels like
That's interesting.
that one. I feel like well, here, do you hate it?
No, I I feel the same way about it being the de facto outro as I did for the Schoolboy Q. I forgot the name of the song. The Schoolboy Q outro. In terms of like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if it was longer, I would like it more. But like where it is right now, I enjoy it. It's just like I just want a little bit more of it.
Yeah. I just think that's such a good blend, and I think this is where Flo Milli shines. Is like, it used to be unique when someone could sing their own hook and rap their own verses, right? And
Hmm.
it's not so unique anymore. Like it's pretty common. But I think that you get so many sides of an artist when they will do that. So like her, like doing the like like the hook, and it's like the Not Sorry, like sorry I'm the life of the party, and then it's like you get into the verses, and she's super smooth in and out of hooks and verses, and that's what I want more of. And even in the album description, it's like, oh yeah, like part of Cardi B. I'm just looking at the track list. Sorry, part of Flo Milli's like persona is like this brash, and she has the voice. She like that. There's that higher register that she can go to that's like does the thing. It cuts right through all the noise.
Hmm.
And personally, this goes for Flo Milli. This goes for, and this. The second someone starts like yelling at me in the headphones, I'm turning it off.
Yeah.
Right. Like the second someone starts getting obnoxious on purpose, like I'm turning it off. The only song that I've liked recently is Pig Feet off of Blue Lips, where it's just like super hype at the beginning, and then like again, like 35-year-old Schoolboy Q shows up, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I want like the old guy doing this. Um, so those moments don't mean as much to me, but something like Not Sorry or Never Lose Me or Can't Stay Mad, where like Flo Milli's really singing the hook, and then she
Hmm.
just like slides in and out of verses, and like that's where she's the strongest to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she's the strongest on this album when she's being more melodic. And I think going back to like my original point, that's the secondary bag that she's trying to develop and she's trying to get into. And if I'm being honest, I think listening to the album, it kind of seems like that's really what she's trying to accentuate. She's trying to establish that second bag so that she can be not just known for her rapping ability, but also the fact that she could get melodic as well. And I think that the things to take away, like obviously she has to appease her fans, she has to appease her fan base by rapping. Like no matter what, she's a rapper first, or people are going to like her, or people who loved her from the first two projects are still going to love her for her rapping and they want to see her rap every single time. But again, like I think one song that you missed out in terms of talking about when you start talking about the melodic songs is Toast. I think it's first of all, I think it's amazing track listing that you have Never Lose Me. Because the first three, what is that? First four tracks are really just like Flo Milli that we've like heard before in terms of
Yeah.
like she's rapping. The beats are more standard compared to the rest of the game. But like for Flo Milli, because like Flo Milli is usually rapping on some weird beats in the first place. So in a way, Flo Milli rapping on these beats that are standard hip hop beats is kind of weird for her, if that makes sense. So in that way, I feel like because of that, we get those first four tracks where she is showing us, okay, I'm Flo Milli, I can still rap, and then she hits us with "Never Lose Me," which is going to be the hit off of this. It's already the hit. That's why it's on the album twice. It's on the album at track 14 for the streams that it already generated, and it's going to go off again because it's SZA and Cardi B. Whenever you have these two artists, whenever you have one of these artists, it's gonna go off. So you have both of them, it's gonna go like even further than what it's supposed to be. But then you have Toast, which has like it continues the melodic vibes, and then we get Can't Stay Mad, and then we get Edible, we get Layup. Also, like those five songs, really,
Yeah.
not even six, because Life Hack is also kind of melodic in terms of melodies, in terms of excuse me, in terms of Flo Milli's cadence and stuff like that. So you get six straight tracks of melodic Flo Milli, and then we get Clap Some, which is it seems like it's supposed to be like a song for the club. But overall, I like the track listing here. The one note that I would say in terms of features, I feel like on Edible, I feel like Gunna could have skated using his signature flow. Like it seems like he's trying a new flow there, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But I feel like if Gunna just hit with the da 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 that flow, I feel like it would have
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
crazy, and I think that that could have took that song to another level. But overall, like there isn't really much. There isn't bad production here. Probably if I had to take one beat out, it would probably Tell Me What You Want because it's just like that, but at the same time, it's like that's Flo Milli at her best, like taking the trash beats that nobody can really understand where the beat is and then still sounding on beat. Like that's
Yeah.
super impressive. So like Flo Milli's one of those weird um artists where it's like she could take something that's bad and make it great, but then at the same time, like because she's so because you're so used to her taking the bad stuff and turning it great, or things that you wouldn't normally touch and turning it great. It sounds weird when you hear her on something that's normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of artists like that. And I think sometimes, especially like because I listen to Flo Milli when me and you were gonna talk about Flo Milli, right? Like that's I listen to like the same five artists. I listen to the same type of music all the time, right? I listen to like just like Boldy James and Vince Staples, and you know what I mean? Like that's where I am 98% of the time. And so for me, as a more of a casual listener, right? I hear the normal production. I'm like, oh, she's like skating on that. Like that
Mhm.
is perfect, right? But there is a time in again, and it's a good juxtaposition that we talked about Schoolboy Q recently because it's like this is where like last week we're talking about Schoolboy, right? And we're like, oh yeah, like he gets the benefit of the doubt because he's
Mhm.
been around for a long time. And it's like, well, I mean, we have 3 albums in a row now where Flo Milli is like, all right, this is what I do, right? Like you said, I'm gonna take these like instrumentals that you might not like think are conventional, and then I'm gonna like find the pocket on that, and I'm gonna like stay there. And then right, so like her fit, and that's why she is like has the reputation she does because I feel like she doesn't get as messy as other rappers
Yeah.
right now, right? Like men or women, right? She's not, and you see people try to like pull her into stuff sometimes, and then she'll tweet like, "No, like I'm not part of that." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's like we're seeing an artist who's very about like the music, like right, like about the albums, about what she's, and there I have a ton of respect for that. So it's like even though like we'll get into it, like this album might not stick with me, it's probably not for me, right?
Mhm.
but I can listen to it and like you and I are saying, we can be like, all right, this is someone who's like putting this together on purpose. I think there are points that are like definitely like aren't for me, definitely aren't for me. Like I can listen to the melodic stuff and be like, all right, I like this like poppier, like this, groovier stuff. I don't like the super brash, like, you know what I mean? But like you said, there's a diehard fan base out there that's like, no, that's our Flo Milli. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like it's the same way, like, like when your favorite rapper, my favorite rapper, like really gets in there like zone, it's like,
Hmm.
all right, this is why I'm here. And people outside of that are like, nah, I don't really like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like for me, like when Drake does a 5 minute song, right, and it's one verse, and it's just like, no, there is no hook, there is no like Instagrammable moment, there is no. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah. And then other people are like, well, no, like where's the like 21? Can you do something for me? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they're like, where's that? So I get it, and it's so tough, man, with the how music works right now. And you and I talked about this a lot on text, where it's just like I feel like certain artists, their artistry gets lost because they don't participate in the greater game. And the only people who can kind of just like stick to the art are ones who were around before
Yeah.
this all came about, right? Like we don't have very many people who can, like again, a Schoolboy Q. He was here long before the TikTok era was here. Kendrick made an album last year that was very much like his album, right? Like
Hmm.
that wasn't that album sounded like he couldn't care if anyone listened to it, right? Like he was like, no, I'm Kendrick. I made this, right? And then you have someone like Drake who understands the game, and he's like, I got to give this person this and this person
Hmm.
that and that person that. So it's just I don't know. I'm getting a little lost here, but it's like albums like this, especially made from an artist who has buzz and has juice, but isn't on the level of some other artists. I feel like they get lost a lot of the time
Yeah.
because like unless they play the game.
That's why I think it's interesting to watch Flo Milli's career because she did start off being independent, and at least the first album, "Oh Why'd You Here," that one was definitely an independent release, and now like the past two have been on. I believe she's on RCA. I literally just looked at it. Yeah, she's on RCA Records. So her being on a label now also kind of going back to the other conversation about like the rollout in the singles that I hated, like Chocolate Rain and stuff like that. Part of me wonders, was that her trying to make that? Like, was that her trying to be like, this is my new sound? Or was that the label saying, this is what works? You need to do that. And like, we need you to do that so that you could sell. And ultimately, if in this scenario, if the scenario is true, which I have no like contacts or whatever to say this is true or this isn't true. But I'm just saying, like, ultimately, if it is a scenario where the label's trying to push her to do the samples and she comes out with this, ultimately she wins. And because of that, we all win because we get to see a genuine or we get to hear a genuine Flo Milli album compared to some bullshit that's just slapped together and she doesn't even really
Yeah.
have her heart in the first place. So like ultimately I'm just satisfied for this. Another thing too, the length of this album, it's perfect. It's just
Yeah.
perfect.
It
And it's
is.
like you ate a satisfying meal, and then the waiter comes over, like, do you want dessert? Yeah, I'll take some dessert. That's how I feel. I'm like, if she wants to attach more songs to this, I'm happy
Yeah.
to listen to those as well. Because it's just so concise. And the track listing, the way that she goes about it is really beautiful too. I do have one more note, just like one feature that I would have liked to see on this album, and that's Lotto on Got the Juice. Got the Juice. Like Flo Milli's the way that Flo Milli is rapping on that song reminds me a lot of how Lotto raps. And it would have been nice to see those two women like go at it on the same track and see like, oh no, this verse is better, this verse is better. I think that would have been nice to see. But besides that, and honestly, taking out "Tell Me What You Want" because I just don't like that beat, even though like again it's Flo Milli being Flo Milli. Besides all that, honestly, I think this is really a best case scenario for. Especially when you consider like the rollout and how many doubts and how many people really had doubts about what was going to come out of this album in the first place. I think ultimately Flo Milli wins. My only thing now is it's clear she has the talent, but I wonder because she started off as independent and now because she really kind of releases like every 2 years. I wonder how big she could get, how many because I think her talent is worthy of her being placed in the same conversation as, for example, Lotto, Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion. But the thing is that those artists already it seemed like those artists already had the button pushed for them when they got into the game.
Yeah.
And with Flo Milli, it doesn't really seem like anyone has pushed the button on her yet. And I think she deserves it. So that's really my only
Yeah.
concern moving forward.
I mean, do you think part of that is like not being from like because like Lotto's from Atlanta, Megan's
Mhm.
from Houston, Cardi B's from New York. Do you think that's like being from like Alabama? Like
It could be.
you don't get the you
Mhm.
because you can't like if you're from I mean I know this being from Massachusetts, right? Like everyone's like, "Oh, you're from Boston," right? Like if you're
Mhm.
from anywhere in those states, right? Like you could live somewhere outside of New York City, but like if you get big, they're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." Like you know what I mean? Yeah, of course
Mhm.
you were in New York City. But it's like you might not have been. But like so I wondered that and I also just think like Flo Milli doesn't necessarily play the game the way other people do. And
Yeah.
I have a level of respect for that because of like the music is there, right? If the music wasn't there, it'd kind of be like what's going on. And something I've been considering, and I'm glad you brought it up with the lead singles and those samples. And I think a lot of it goes back. I mean, it's been happening forever, but the one that always stands out to me is Anaconda, right?
Mhm.
Like it feels like for a decade now we've been trying to like people have been trying to find that moment again, right? Like that sample where an older audience is like, "Oh, I like this song," and then the younger audience is like, "Well, no, it's actually one of my favorites." Putting there, you know what I mean, remixing it. And I wonder if we're getting to a point where artists are doing that leading up to the album to try to go viral, to try to make the money, to try to get the sales to go make the album that they want to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because
That's interesting.
it seems like we're getting to a point where, you only need like and I keep coming back to this because it's been on my mind so much. Listening back to Oxymoron, right? Like Schoolboy
Mhm.
Q has like 6 hits on there,
Mhm.
right? And now you only really need like one. And honestly, you only need like 25 seconds,
Yeah.
right? You just need like a hot like TikTok sound, and then it's like perfect. Like this song is gonna sell and that'll carry. So I wonder if we're getting to a point where it's like, all right, we're gonna like have a couple attempts at that, and then whether they go on the album or not, like we just had Nicki who included what felt like all of them on the album,
Yeah.
right? And then some artists don't. So I wonder if that's a little like, all right, yeah, I'll play the game here. I'll try to like do this, and then I'm gonna go make the album I want. And I hope that's the case because
Yeah.
this sound there. I think there's some, like I said, I think there's some formulaic stuff on here, but that's not saying that this is like it's disingenuous or like trying to go viral. Like I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I agree. I think, but even with that, at least from the perspective of the samples, the song that went off wasn't a sample. It was Never Lose Me. That was a song that
Right.
really started to get her momentum up to her releasing this album. So I
Yeah, it's
like,
good.
yeah, like it's I love that Never Lose Me is the hit. Because
Yes.
again, like if Chocolate Rain was the hit, I would you have no idea how mad I would have been if that was the hit. I really, really would have been mad. If I heard that song on this album, I would have been so pissed. But regardless of that, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, so it's kind of what we've been saying. So my final thought is that this is an album. It's just an artist who continues to get better, right? So it's an artist who continues to put the work in and who clearly is multi-talented, but understands what her bread and butter is and understands what her signature sound is and what her fans like, right? So that's my final thought. That this album is from an artist who kind of understands where they're at, right?
Mhm.
In terms of my top tracks, my number one is Not Sorry.
Mhm.
Number two is New Me. And then number three, it's kind of a cheap one, but Never Lose Me is my
Mhm.
number three.
Wait, which one? The one with Cardi B or the one with SZA?
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean
the
the
one
one
with
with Cardi B and
SZA.
SZA.
Yes, the one with
It's
SZA and
well
Cardi
features
B.
and one without features. Yeah, go ahead.
But
My
honestly,
fault.
I like Not Sorry into Never Lose Me, so I've been
Mhm.
playing the last one more, but I think I
Yeah,
like that first one more, if that makes
that's
sense.
a
So
you're right. Like that's a nice transition from Not Sorry to Never
yeah,
Lose Me.
right.
Yeah.
So we got Not Sorry number one, New Me two, Never Lose Me with the features with SZA and Cardi B three.
Mhm.
My subjective playback value, I think those Not Sorry, Never Lose Me, New Me. I'm working on doing playlists in 2024, so I listen to a variety of music and not, I don't just go to Future and hit shuffle, right? So I think I'll throw those three in a playlist. So hopefully I get a few weeks to a few months out of those songs. Objectively, I think her fan base will run with this because it's a good album. And I think that Never Lose Me has the legs to be like a real song. So there's context that I'd like to get into, and I think we will moving forward. Objectively, I'm going to give this 3 to 4 weeks, and let's see if Never Lose Me can really, really carry things because it it has all the versions, right? So it's like clearly it's like numbers wise it's going to carry, but let's see if it can kind of throw the rest of this album on its back because the rest of this album deserves it.
Yeah. My final thoughts are Fine Host Day. With Fine Host Day, Flo Milli sets the bar high for hip hop women planning to release an album this year. Flo Milli successfully creates an album that is built around her versatility, cementing respect for her artistry beyond her amazing rapping ability. And the beat selection on this album is near perfect, providing the ideal environment for Flo Milli's successful experiments. My top three tracks: number three is Never, number two is Toast, and number one is Never Lose Me featuring Cardi B and SZA. Objectively, I got 6 months for this album. This album is just meant to be played in the summer. And I think that's another reason why I like that she released it now versus like whenever she was going to release it originally. Because now you have those summer months and you can just play it outside. Subjectively for me, I mean, like I'm not her main demographic, so probably like a month. There's probably gonna be some songs that I'm gonna like, but at the same time, I am going to give it the chance to have the staying power that Heaven Knows by Pink Panthers ended up doing, because I underestimated that, and I'm still listening to Pink Panthers to this day. I listened to it today, so I'm gonna give it the chance to do the same thing. All right, that is it. Thank you for tuning in to episode 502 of the Cat Podcast. Don't forget to leave your opinion of Fine Host Day by Flo Milli in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow Old Milk on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Old Milk Media. Check out oldmilk.co for more information. I'm Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. And we'll see you when hip hop tells us to. We are out. Thanks for watching.